The universe is constantly listening to what it is you want, what it is your energy is showing you want. And not just what you want, but what you don't want. Because it's always listening to you. So when you say, I want to be rich, but then you get a bill in the mail and you start to freak out, those are kind of, you're saying one thing, but doing another. So I like to think of manifestation as these two jars of want and don't want, but really it's love and fear. It's in the way that you act. So when you're trying to manifest or create your own reality or pray or whatever it is you want to call it, when you're trying to call an experience into your life, you have to kind of think about all the ways in which you are attracting what it is you are attracting. So with that example of money, when you say, I want to pull $1,000 by the next week, but then you don't really monitor your behavior throughout that week. It's not to say that you're going to get that $1,000. It really does depend on you. But you have to ask yourself, in what ways am I also acting when it comes to money or abundance in general? So you have these two jars, right? And you're thinking, you have these two jars, you have some marble, like pink and purple marbles. The purple ones go into what you're attracting and what you want, but then in that other jar is also what you're thinking about when it comes to that topic. So you sit there and you think to yourself, I want $1,000 in the next week. So you put a purple marble in that attraction jar, that love jar. You're thinking of abundance. And then you get that bill in the mail. And even though you weren't sitting there thinking about it too much, if that frequency or energy changes around money or around abundance, the universe is listening. So for that moment where you're like, shit, how am I going to pay this? That's one pink marble in the, fear jar, in the detraction jar. And then you go to, the grocery store, and you're counting every penny because that's what you're used to. And it's not to say to be mindful. It's not to say to not be mindful of your grocery list. But when you're looking at every single number and worried about whether or not you're going to have enough, even though you've already planned to be able to spend a certain amount, and you're freaking out when you get to the check stand, that's another marble in the detractor and fear jar. And now you bought a lottery ticket and you're excited to win. You're saying, I'm going to attract this money to me. There's one in the attraction jar. But then you scratch that lottery ticket and it didn't win, and you start to think how much you suck and how much life sucks and how you're never going to win and how this, that, and the other. Well, now you're filling up the detractor jar. It's these little moments, like even when you're watching shows and there's a show or a commercial. Don't even get me started on commercials. Like, if you have cable television, the commercials that are on there are just all about detraction. They're all about worries for things that don't even exist yet in your reality. But, there's commercials where, imagine if you are hit, who are you going to call? If you're in a car accident, who are you going to call? If you need money now because you've got bills to pay, who are you going to call? All of these services, in quotations, that can provide you an out and help you in your moment of need, but are really predatory. These ads are built to inspire a feeling that inspires you to act on receiving that service. So when you see an ad like that and you think, oh shit, what would I do if I got hit? Oh my God, I couldn't even afford a new tire if mine busted right now. I couldn't even afford that. You're filling up that detractor jar because now it's really fear. It's fear. You're adding more marbles and more marbles to that jar versus the one that says, I'm abundant, I am love, everything's going to be fine. If my tire pops, something will come and I will be taken care of because I am love. You have to like sit there and literally practice filling up the jar of love if you're not used to practicing that jar, because our default mode goes to the worry, it goes to the what ifs, it goes to the fear. There's so many things that tell us to be fearful. Things that are actually going on, things that have gone on, things that will never go on but maybe went on in a movie or a show that you're watching. You know, I've talked about media before, but paying attention to what you watch can influence what you think. And if you're watching shows or commercials that negatively impact what it is you really want out of your life, you have to then even more so be more mindful of practicing intentional decision making and intentional attraction and intentional love around what it is you want. So that's why it's kind of best practice, because you can't always stop those thoughts from popping in if you do get that bill in the mail, but you can set some time to yourself to say, regardless of those, 10 times throughout today that I thought about how scary it would be if I got a bill in the mail for money that I don't have, I can sit here for 30 minutes, 20 minutes and spend more time thinking about abundance, thinking about love, being grateful for what it is I have and seeing the abundance in that. And that's going to be more valuable in helping me attract what it is I want to attract than monitoring every thought if you can't really do that. I mean, you get better at it as you start noticing these things, but at the beginning it's hard because you don't even realize where they're coming from. You don't even realize they're happening sometimes. But if you can be mindful about your thoughts, you do get better at it. But just to start off with, set some time to be intentional with what it is you want to attract. And that's how you manifest, because it's not just sitting here and saying, I want the thing that I want, I want the thing that I want, the things that I want is going to come to me. You also have to be aware of all of the other times where you're detracting from that desire. And that just means you have to pay attention to what it is you think, how it is you talk about money, what it is you're watching, and how that influences how you feel. It's very, the title of this is mindfulness and manifestation, but the mindfulness is the biggest part of paying attention to every single thing. And it seems like a lot, but once you start paying attention to it and you feel the heaviness and the ickiness of how it feels to always think pessimistically and always be afraid of a bill that might show up, or a thing or that you might have to pay for, or a fear that you might have, whether it's attracting money or attracting love, it's all the same, because if you're attracting love, you're kind of thinking in the same way. I deserve, this person, and this is who I want to come into my life, and this, that, and the other. And then you see this ad for singles and you're like, why can't I be loved? So there's paying attention to what you think and paying attention to how you feel and paying attention to all that comes into your experience is how you manifest better. But another one of those ways, like I said, is just spending more time, being intentional with what it is you actually want, because that's a better way to not a better way. There is no really better way, because they're all going to help. But if you can't monitor every single thought you have throughout the day, or if you're not doing that or not used to doing that, what you can do is set some time intentionally to be like, you know what, for the next 30 minutes, all I'm going to say is I am love and I attract money, and think about all of the times you've done that. Prove to yourself when you've done that. Prove to yourself when the universe is taking care of you. And if you do that for 30 minutes, the time is arbitrary, but if you do that more than you sit in that pessimism, it's going to make an impact in your life, even if it's just energetically for the day. but you're putting more marbles in the jar that you really want to fill intentionally, even if throughout the day some of those pessimistic or fearful marbles go into that other jar. It happens, you know. We're human. We have these experiences, and we have this our past sometimes influences what we think about, and like I said, what we're watching and what we're going through and what's going on in the world. But start picturing those two jars and ask yourself, like, how do I fill up one more than the other? The other might fill up passively, but how do I fill this more intentionally? How do I focus on what it is I want? How do I bring that experience into my world a little bit quicker so that I can learn about creating the reality I really want to create? And as you focus in on that abundance, you start to see it in other places, and you'll start to show gratitude in more ways than just waiting for yourself getting what you want. You start to see the gratitude. You start to see the abundance in what you already have, and then that from there comes the gratitude, and from there comes more and more manifestation of what it is you really want, and it's incredible.